Okay, and welcome back. So we're going to find sine of theta when cosine of negative theta is equal to root 5 over 5, and we're given the restriction that tangent of theta is less than 0. So basically this is a problem where we're going to use a negative angle identities and we're going to use some other form of identity. So we're given that cosine of negative theta is equal to root 5 over 5, and we're given that tangent of theta is less than 0. This is just going to help us figure out what quadrant we're going to be in. The first thing you should do is apply any identities you know to the original function. So in this case here, it's a negative angle identity. And cosine of a negative angle is basically cosine of the positive angle because it's an even function. So that's going to be root 5 over 5. So basically we know cosine is positive, and we know that tangent is going to be negative because less than 0 basically means negative. So what we want to do is draw a little unit circle here, and we can use that little mnemonic, all students take calculus. All the signs of the functions are positive in quadrant 1. In the quadrant 2, you have sine and cosecant functions are positive. In quadrant 3, the tangent function and the cotangent function are positive. And in quadrant 4, the cosine and the secant functions are positive. So in this case here, we want to figure out what quadrant we're in where tangent is negative, yet the cosine, after we applied the negative angle identity, is positive. So in this case here, cosine is going to be positive in quadrants 1 and in quadrant 4. So cosine is positive here, and cosine is positive here. And tangent is negative in quadrants 2 and in quadrant 4. So why aren't we choosing quadrant 2? Well, because in quadrant 2 cosine would be negative, and that doesn't work. So the only quadrant where cosine is positive and tangent is negative is in quadrant 4. So basically our final answer of sine theta is going to equal a negative number. We just need to figure out what that is. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the problem. So this is our ultimate goal, figure out what sine theta is. The easiest way to relate sine and cosine together would be through the Pythagorean identity, sine squared plus cosine squared equal 1. So we're going to use this identity right here. So we have sine squared theta plus cosine theta, quantity squared, which is the same as cosine squared theta, and cosine of theta is root 5 over 5, and that's equal to 1. And if we square the root 5 over 5, we'll get this: sine squared theta plus root 5 squared is 5, 5 squared is 25, and that's equal to 1. And then we subtract 5 over 25 from both sides, and we get sine squared theta is equal to 1 minus 5 over 25. And we simplify 1 minus 5 over 25. 25 times 1 is 25, minus 5 is 20 over 25. So basically you're taking the denominator, multiplying it times the whole number, and whatever sign this is, you're either adding or subtracting this last number here. That's what I did here. So if you need help with that, I have a video on fractions. So you have sine squared theta is equal to 20 over 25. So now what we're going to do is apply the square root property, and normally you would write absolute sine theta is equal to 20 over 25, but if you don't understand what that means, don't worry. Basically you'll end up with this: plus or minus the square root of 20 over 25 for sine of theta. Now we're going to simplify the radical, and we'll get sine of theta is equal to, well, we know it's going to be negative, so we could just eliminate that and write our answer negative. And square root of 20 over square root of 25, we can do that over here. Square root of 20 over square root of 25. That's what square root of 20 over 25 is equal to. And this would be 4 times 5, and this would just be 5, so this would be equal to 2 root 5 over 5. So our answer is going to be a negative number, and it's going to be negative 2 root 5 over 5. And that's our final answer. So just a couple things to keep in mind when you're working problems with negative angle identities. One, apply the negative angle identity when possible, as soon as you can, and so you can figure out what the sign, SIGN, the sign of the function is, whether it's positive or negative, and figure out what quadrant you're in. Then whatever restrictions you're given, try to figure out what quadrant that's in, and then find the quadrant that satisfies the conditions you were given. And then at the very end, just assign either a positive or negative value according to the function that they're asking. In this case here, they asked for the sine function, so we figured out it's going to be a negative based in the quadrant that we derived. So in this case here, this is our final answer. So I hope this was helpful, and good luck with your homework and tests in the future, and thank you for watching.